The night. It has a strange charm, doesn't it? A silence reigns. A velvet curtain hides the rough edges of the daytime world. But sometimes, in that silence, uninvited sounds come. Unnameable feelings creep into the mind. I still vividly remember the first night I set foot in that building. An old block of architecture standing silently in the heart of the sleeping city. That memory, like an ink stain, never completely fades. At that time, my life was at a rather bumpy turn. A broken marriage, an unstable career. I needed a fulcrum, even if only temporarily. And the night shift security job at this old Mercer office building appeared like a reluctant lifeline. The salary is not high, but stable. The job, according to the manager, is quite simple. Mainly sitting at the reception desk, monitoring the security camera screen, and occasionally making a few rounds to make sure everything is peaceful and that no strangers sneak in. "It's very quiet here at night," he said, his voice even. The building was built in the 50s, a bit old but sturdy. I nodded, trying to act calm, even though I was a little confused. I didn't expect anything extraordinary, just a place to make a living. A quiet space to rearrange the broken pieces of my life. The first shift began on a chilly autumn evening. At about 7 o'clock, I was there. The security guard from the previous shift, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, took me for a quick tour. The reception hall is large but empty. The old marble floor reflects the yellow light. The security room was small and cramped, with a series of black and white screens showing quiet views of the building. Empty hallways, silent elevator lobbies, and dark hallways on the upper floors. The stairs were old concrete. The metal railing was cold and rattled softly when I held on to it. "Don't worry," he patted my shoulder. "Nothing's going on here. Just lock the door carefully and look at the camera from time to time." Having said that, he quickly put on his windbreaker, greeted me, and disappeared into the falling night. I stay alone. The vast space of the building suddenly became vast and oppressive. I checked the doors and side doors again, making sure they were locked tightly. I put my bag and thermos of coffee down behind the front desk. The first few hours passed in boring peace. The ticking of the old wall clock in the lobby was the only sound that broke the silence. I turned on a late-night radio show, the host's deep voice like an invisible companion. Every now and then, I glanced up at the row of camera screens. Still just static images, the second-floor hallway, the third-floor lobby, the empty office on the fourth floor, and the long hallway on the fifth floor, the top floor. Around midnight, I decided to carry out the first requested patrol. The elevator here is very old, creaking and moving slowly like a tired old man, so I chose to take the stairs. The air in the stairwell was thick with the smell of old concrete and dust. The yellow light cast long shadows on the mottled walls. The second and third floors are completely quiet. The offices here are all closed at night, the dark glass doors reflecting my distorted image under the hallway lights. There was no sound, other than the sound of my own footsteps echoing on the floor. I didn't expect to meet anyone, and there was no one. But when I stepped onto the fourth floor, a strange feeling began to take over. The air seemed to become heavier, thicker. There was a faint musty smell, not too strong but noticeable enough, like the smell of walls that had been soaked with rainwater over decades. The hallway lights here are still on, but they seem to flicker more, not as steady as the lower floors. I walked down the hallway listening. There was only silence in response. I shrugged, telling myself maybe I was just worrying too much. The first night, it's normal to feel a little nervous. Then I walked up to the fifth floor, the highest floor. A long, deep hallway spread out before us. On both sides were identical office doors. Some doors have signs with the names of small companies. Others are empty, covered in dust. The entire space was engulfed in almost absolute silence. A heavy, oppressive silence. I held my breath, trying to listen for any sound, no matter how small, just to make sure I was truly alone. And then I heard it, a sound of footsteps, heavy, clear, echoed from the end of the hallway, behind me. It didn't sound like normal footsteps, but like the sound of hard shoe soles hitting old wooden floors, creating a deep, heavy sound. My heart tightened, then pounded in my chest. I turned around. Not a single person in sight. The hallway was still empty and silent under the yellow, flickering light. Nothing moves. There's nowhere to hide. I stood there stunned, a cold feeling running through my body. "Hello," I called softly, my voice shaking slightly. "Is anyone there?" There was only silence in response. My voice sounded so lost and small in this vast space. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to weigh even more heavily on me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Probably because the building is old, strange sounds are normal. Plumbing? Ventilation system? I made excuses for myself. I carefully walked down the hallway, checking each door. The door handle is cold. Everything is locked tight. I peered through the cracks in the doors of the empty offices, seeing only darkness and dusty old furniture. There were no signs of life. After a few tense minutes, without hearing any more noise, I decided to go back. My steps became more urgent on the way down the stairs. When I got back to the security room, the first thing I did was stare at the 5th floor's camera screen. The hallway is empty, quiet, not a sign of movement. I rewound the video recording a few minutes earlier, right at the moment I heard the footsteps. Still nothing. The image on the camera perfectly matched what I saw with my own eyes. A quiet hallway. Maybe I was imagining it. The first night, the fatigue, the anxiety. It can all make the mind play tricks on me. I tried to get rid of the feeling of insecurity, make a strong cup of coffee and focus on the radio program. But the second night, things started to get weirder in a different way. Everything was going normally until about 1 a.m. I was sitting watching the camera, sipping a cup of coffee that had cooled down. Suddenly, on the screen displaying images of the 5th floor, a strange flickering light appeared in the far corner of the hallway. It was not the usual flickering hallway light, but more like a dim spot of light, briefly appearing and then disappearing in just a split second. It didn't form a clear shape, just a strange disturbance of light. I squinted and rubbed my eyes a few times, but it appeared again, then disappeared again. My heart started beating faster again. I decided to go up there and check. Again the stairs, again the familiar feeling of heavy air when reaching the 4th floor. This time, the musty smell seemed stronger, with a faint smell of wet rotten wood. When I arrived on the 5th floor, I turned on the flashlight, shining the beam toward the end of the hallway, where I had seen a strange light on the camera. The hallway was still as silent as a sheet of paper. I walked slowly, the soles of my shoes making lonely clicking sounds. The flashlight beam swept across silent doors and peeling walls. And then, I heard those heavy footsteps again. This time, the sound seemed closer, coming from the corner of the hallway, near a small warehouse that I knew was always locked. I swallowed my saliva. My palms began to sweat. My throat is dry. I braced myself and walked faster towards that dark corner. "Who is there?" I called, trying to keep my voice calm but unable to hide my trembling. When I shined my flashlight into the corner of the hallway leading to the warehouse door, I saw only a blank wall and an old, locked wooden door. I tried turning the door handle. Hard lock. There are no signs of being pried open. A sudden cold breeze brushed the back of my neck, even though the hallway had no wind at all. The air seemed thick, weighing heavily on my chest. I turned around and shined my flashlight down the hallway again. Still no one in sight. It's just me and the eerie silence. I hurried back to the security room, my heart beating wildly. I checked the camera again immediately. The 5th floor monitor still showed an empty hallway. There was no flashing light, no movement recorded the entire time I was up there. The feeling of insecurity grew more and more inside me. It is no longer a fantasy. Something is really wrong on this 5th floor. In the following weeks, strange phenomena continued erratically. Some nights, I hear those heavy footsteps many times, sometimes far away, sometimes right behind me. Other nights, I catch a glimpse of something passing at the end of the hallway on the camera screen. A blur, a lightning-fast movement at the edge of the frame. But it never lasted long enough for me to see clearly. And every time I rewound the video, nothing unusual was recorded. Sometimes, I feel like I see a vague human shape, but it passes by so quickly, making me doubt my eyesight, wondering if it's because I'm too tired. I tried adjusting the camera angle, checking the wiring, thinking there might be a blind spot or some technical error. But everything was in vain. Strange phenomena still happen. I started to feel scared every time I had to patrol the upper floors, especially the 5th floor. It's a part of the job, I can't avoid it, but the fear keeps growing. My heart started beating faster as soon as I stepped up the stairs to the 4th floor. The musty smell seemed to cling to me. The hallway lights on the 5th floor also seemed to follow my fear. They always buzzed or flickered dimly at the most unexpected times, especially when I was at the end of the hallway. Sometimes, I stand hesitantly at the beginning of the 5th floor hallway for a few seconds, taking a deep breath to gain courage before entering. The feeling of being watched becomes more constant. It was as if someone was hiding behind a corner or peeping through the door of some empty office. I tried opening a few unlocked doors, but inside were just empty rooms, old tables and chairs covered in dust, and the air was stagnant and cold. Nothing unusual, but it also didn't feel normal. One morning, as I was about to finish my shift, the building manager stopped by. He asked about the status of the night's work. I hesitated, but in the end just said everything was fine. I don't want to appear weak or cause trouble. I need this job. He nodded, looking unsurprised. Yeah, he said. Some security guards said they heard strange noises upstairs before, but we checked carefully and didn't see anything. It's probably just an old pipe or the ventilation system. I just nodded in agreement, not arguing further. But part of me wanted to scream, wanted to ask them to install more cameras, wanted them to investigate more closely. I wanted proof that I wasn't crazy, that what I was going through was real. But the fear of losing my job held me back. I kept quiet. About 2 weeks later, on a particularly hot night, even though it was fall, I experienced something that haunts me to this day. Everything started as usual. I locked the door, checked the cameras, and made my first patrol at 11 p.m. Nothing unusual happened. Around 2 a.m., I was sitting in the security room, trying to keep my eyes open. Suddenly, the camera screen on the 5th floor flashed again. But this time, it wasn't just a fleeting blip. The light on the screen darkened for a few seconds. The screen seemed to lose its signal, then suddenly lit up again. And I see it. At the end of the hallway, near the last door on the right, there was a figure standing there. A human figure. Tall, thin, but completely in the dark. No features could be discerned. It just stood still, motionless, its face seemingly facing the camera. My stomach turned. The blood seemed to freeze in the veins. I jumped up from the chair, clutching the flashlight, my heart beating so hard it hurt in my chest. I intended to rush up the stairs immediately, but at that moment that figure disappeared. In just a blink of an eye, completely disappeared. The camera screen returned to normal, leaving only the familiar empty hallway. I can't think anymore. I grabbed the keys, rushed out of the security room, and ran up the stairs. My hands were shaking so much that I almost dropped the keys when trying to open the stairwell door on the 5th floor. The dim hallway appeared before my eyes. The yellow light above was still buzzing and flickering uncomfortably. The hallway is empty. The last door, where I saw that figure, was still tightly closed and silent as always. I tried the handle, still locked. I used a flashlight to shine into every corner, checking every recessed door, every small bathroom cabinet. Nothing, not a trace. The air still has a characteristic old, musty smell. I feel nauseous and dizzy. I left the 5th floor as quickly as possible, feeling like something invisible was chasing me. When I returned to the security room, my legs were still shaking. I sat down on the chair, trying to breathe evenly. I stared at the camera screen on the 5th floor. It looks perfect, calm. No flicker, no shadow, no movement. As if nothing had ever happened. My mind was spinning with unanswered questions. Am I losing my mind? But that image is too clear. And that feeling of fear is so real. Those heavy footsteps, how real are they? As heavy as the sound of boots walking on a hollow floor. That night, I decided not to leave the security room anymore unless absolutely necessary. I don't dare go to the 5th floor alone anymore. After that terrible night, I changed my work habits. I still have to do mandatory patrols, but I do them in a hurry. I practically ran up the floors, took a quick glance at the hallway, and then immediately ran back down again. I began to hate the feeling of stuffy air on the 5th floor. It felt like it was squeezing me from all sides. Even the walls looked different, the paint peeling in places I hadn't noticed before. The hallway light always seems to dim right when I step on it. My fear was probably exaggerated, but the feeling was real. My workplace anxiety began to affect my personal life, although at the time, I didn't realize how much worse it would get. During the day, I have difficulty sleeping. My mind is haunted by what might happen on the next shift. My stomach always feels tight, but I still have to continue. I need money. One night, I decided to try a different approach. I brought a small digital recorder from home. I thought maybe I can record clearer evidence of those footsteps. Around midnight, I mustered up the courage to go to the 5th floor and hid the tape recorder in a hidden corner near the end of the hallway, where I often heard noises. I pressed the record button, the little red light flashed, then quickly returned to the security room. That night, around 2 a.m., I caught a glimpse of blurry movement on the 5th floor camera screen. I recorded that time in my notebook. Late in the morning, around 5 o'clock, before the end of my shift, I went up to retrieve the tape recorder. When I got home in the morning, after trying unsuccessfully to get a few hours of sleep, I plugged in my headphones and played the recording again. Most of the time there was just heavy silence, mixed with the faint hum of the hallway lights. But then, right around the time I had noted it down, around 2 a.m., I heard it. Clear, unmistakable. Heavy footsteps. Click, click. They sounded a few times, stopped, then continued, as if someone was pacing aimlessly in the empty hallway. After that, there was silence again. No voices, no doors opening, no other sounds. There was only that lonely and haunting sound of footsteps. A chill ran down my spine. At least now I have audio proof. But that didn't make me feel better. On the contrary, it made me even more scared. It confirms that something or someone is actually there. I considered showing the recording to the manager, but decided against it. I was afraid he would think I was deliberately making up stories, or think I was a paranoid person haunted by nonsense sounds. I kept that recording to myself, like a dark secret. Activity on the 5th floor seems to show no signs of stopping. Heavy footsteps still sounded on random nights. The light on the camera still occasionally flickers or transient shadows appear. The feeling of being watched still stuck with me every time I set foot on that floor. My heart was still pounding like it wanted to jump out of my chest every time I opened the door to the stairs leading to the 5th floor. I tried to find a new place to live, partly because I wanted to leave the sad memories of my old marriage, partly because I wanted to find a quieter place to rest after stressful working nights. And I found a small apartment on the ground floor in a seemingly quiet residential area, not too far from work. The building is also quite old, with thick walls and narrow hallways. The landlord was a kind-hearted old lady who said the previous tenant had just moved to be closer to work. I didn't think much, the price was affordable and the space was just enough for a single person like me. I thought at least at home I would have peace. Oh, I was wrong. The terror didn't seem to want to let me go. It followed me home. The first nights in the new apartment were quite peaceful. I arranged the furniture, trying to create a cozy living space. But after just a few nights, something strange started happening. Very subtle, but enough to make me pay attention. Those are the doors. Bedroom door and bathroom door. I have a habit of closing all the interior doors before going to bed. I don't like the feeling of open space. But many mornings I wake up to find the bedroom door or the bathroom door or both ajar. Just a little, not wide open, but definitely not where I had closed them the night before. At first, I thought it might be due to the draft. Old building. I checked the windows, they were all closed and securely latched. I checked the door frame and didn't see any significant gaps. I tried pushing the doors gently. They were quite heavy and not easily blown open by the wind. Furthermore, it is not always windy. The incident continues. Almost every morning, at least one door opens a crack. I started to feel uncomfortable. Just to be on the safe side, I started locking the bathroom door from the inside before going to bed. The next morning, I not only found it unlocked, but also ajar as before. This is absurd. The front door of the apartment is always carefully locked by me with 2 locks. a deadbolt lock, and a chain lock. I checked carefully every morning. There were no signs of being forced open or broken into. So how did the bathroom door unlock and open by itself? I began to doubt my own memory. Maybe I was so tired and absent-minded that I forgot to close the door or lock it. I decided to try a little experiment. I took a small, empty cardboard box and placed it right next to the foot of the bathroom door after carefully closing and locking the door. If the door opens, it will push the box away. The next morning, my heart stopped beating for a beat. The bathroom door was still ajar, and the cardboard box was located about half a meter away from its original position towards the bathroom. It wasn't dented or toppled over, but looked as if someone had gently picked it up and set it aside. Another time, I tried placing a paperback book in the gap between the hinge and the bedroom door frame after closing it tightly. The logic is that if the door itself moves due to the building sinking or something, the book will be forced or fall out. The next morning, the bedroom door was ajar, and the book lay neatly on my bedside table. I can't explain anymore. Fear began to creep into my mind, a vague but growing fear. The feeling of insecurity is not only in the workplace, but has also invaded my private space, which should be my safe place. I started recording strange noises I heard at night in the apartment, just like I did at the Mercer building. I use a small notebook and keep it next to my bed. The noises here are different from the heavy footsteps at work. They are more delicate, gentler, usually around 2 to 4 a.m., a soft creak of wood. There was a small click like the door latch had just moved. Sometimes there is a very light rustling sound, like something gliding across the floor. Every time I hear a noise, I sit up, my heart pounding, my throat dry. I turned on the night light, feeling extremely stressed. I wanted to rush out and check every corner, but fear held me back. When I mustered up the courage to check, I never found anything unusual, except that the doors mysteriously opened. My sleep became fitful. I often wake up in the middle of the night, covered in cold sweat. During the day, I pretend like a ghost. My eyes are dark from lack of sleep. Work performance at the Mercer building was also affected. I tried drinking coffee to stay awake, but it only made my stomach growl and my nerves more tense. I tried telling this story to a colleague at my old job who I still keep in touch with. As soon as I mentioned the door opening by itself, I saw a bit of pity in her eyes. Then she quickly changed the subject. I know what people will think. They would assume I was suffering from post-divorce stress, that I was imagining things, or worse, that I was losing my mind. She suggests perhaps the building is stabilizing. Old structures often make strange noises. Door frames may be warped. I considered that theory, but the consistency and the neat way the doorstops were moved made me skeptical of that explanation. To reassure myself, or perhaps to find concrete evidence, I decided to stick small pieces of tape across the edge of the bedroom door and door frame. If the door opens even slightly, the tape will tear or stretch. I glued them on the top edge, where they are unlikely to be accidentally impacted. The next morning, the results were even scarier than I expected. The door was still slightly open, but the tapes were gone. Not a trace. I searched carefully on the floor, in the bedroom, and in the small hallway of the apartment. Nothing. They just disappear like they never existed. At this point, my fear began to turn into another feeling. Someone was in my apartment. Someone came in here while I was sleeping, moving around in the dark, playing with the doors, and even removing the tape I had put on. But how? The main door is still locked tightly. The window is still locked. There were no signs of a break-in. I checked the main door lock again. The latch lock still works fine. The chain lock is still secure. I tried pushing and pulling the windows. They were all sturdy. There's no way to get into the house without leaving a trace. Unless that person has the key. I thought about the landlady, but she seemed like a gentle person. Or the previous tenant. But why do they do that? To scare me? The confusion and fear almost drove me crazy. At night, I lay in bed, straining my ears to listen to every little noise. My stomach cramped, my jaw clenched. Each hour of stuck, every light separation made my heart jump. I started to sleep with the bedroom lights, but that didn't help much. The darkness seemed to crept into the hidden corners, and the doors continued their ghost game. I bought more hard rubber wedge-shaped door blocking pieces, often used to keep the door open. This time, I used them to block the door from the inside, pushing the seasoning into the gap at the door of the door after closing. I hope the weight and friction will prevent any force wanting to push the door to open. Futile. The next morning, I woke up and saw the bathroom door open as usual. The rubber seasoning is a few inches away, on the floor. It is not scratched. There is no sign of being pried or strongly forced. It simply has been moved out of the position. My hand trembled as I picked up the seasoning. The feeling of helplessness and despair invaded me. One night, at more than 2 a.m., I was startled to wake up because of a strange sound. It is not a jammed or a separate sound, but like the sound of footsteps. Very light, very slow. It seems that, in the small corridor outside my bedroom, I held my breath, lying still in the bed. The bedroom door I closed and inserted carefully. My ears buzzed because the heart beating was too strong. The sound of footsteps softly almost did not hear, but it was there, regularly. Low cop, revealed, on the old wooden floor. I thought of calling the police, but what will I say to them? That I heard the light footsteps in my apartment, even though the main door is still locked? That my door opened myself? They will think I'm paranoid. Finally, the fear urged me to act. I slowly sat up, with my hand grabbing a mobile phone on the nightstand. I crept down the bed, barefoot touching the cold floor. I almost did not dare to breathe. My legs are soft. I pressed my ears into the bedroom door, trying to listen. The footsteps seemed to have stopped. I took a deep breath, took the courage, and slowly turned the door. The door opened a small slot, outdoor corridor. The corridor lights were off, even though I remember it had let it turn on before going to bed. I crept into the corridor, raised the phone, turned on its flashlight. The cold white light swept through the small space. Empty living room. The kitchen was silent. I walked towards the bathroom. My heart was pungent. The bathroom door is closed. I tried to twist the door. It is not locked. I pushed the door slightly, illuminating the flashlight inside. Empty. I checked the whole curtain of the bath. Nothing. I went back to check the main door. Still locked 2 layers. Safety pin is still installed. The door handle was not shaken. I stood in the middle of the dark, cold apartment. Only the flashlight from the phone was the only light source. My throat choked. I told myself to calm down, but my whole body was trembling. The strange stress feeling still floating in the air. The feeling that I was not alone. I dragged back to the bed, but could not sleep. I kept staring on the ceiling until the alarm rang at 6:30 a.m. I went to work in the Mercer building with a feeling of physical and mental exhaustion. The fear of work and fear at home blended together, creating a terrible psychological burden. That weekend, I decided to do something more drastic. I will stay up all night, ambush to see if it can catch anything. I prepared some solid coffee pots. Around 11 o'clock at night, I pulled a chair to the living room, placed it in a position that could look straight to the corridor leading to the bedroom and bathroom. I turned off all the lights, leaving only a small, warm yellow night light in the corner of the living room, enough for the space to not be completely dark. I sat there. The phone was firmly held in my hand, trying to fight against the drowsiness. Every hour passed in almost absolute silence.
No estrange noise.
No sound stuck. Nothing motion. The clock is 1 in the morning, then 2 a.m. My eyes began to be heavy. The mind is vague because of caffeine and fatigue. I stood up and walked a few rounds to awake. I went to the bathroom, locked the door from the inside, then closed. I also carefully stuffed a wedge to stop the gap at the foot of the door. After that, I returned to the chair and continued to wait. About 2 hours and 40 minutes, when my eyelids were almost unable to open anymore, my head kept nodding forward. Suddenly, I heard a very light click. My eyes opened. I sat up straight. My heart beat hard. I stared at the bathroom door at the end of the dark corridor. It is still closed, but I definitely heard that sound. A moment later, again a very small jamming, lasting only about a second, as if the wood was expanding or shrinking. I swallowed my saliva, turned on the camera on my phone, facing the corridor. I slowly stood up, trying not to make noise, and carefully walked forward a few steps. The bathroom door is still quiet, but when I got closer, under the weak light from the living room, I realized that the door to stop the door was no longer in the position I had put it anymore. It lies on the floor, about a meter from the door frame. I approached the bathroom door, reaching out to the door. Cold. I tried to rotate lightly. The door was locked from the inside, as I did. My heart seemed to explode in my chest. Is someone inside? How can it be? I pressed my ears into the wooden door, holding my breath. Complete silence. Not a sound. After a few seconds of stress to suffocating, I trembled from the outside key. Luckily, this type of lock can be opened from both sides. I turned the door. The door opened with a small separation. I raised my phone, filmed when I walked inside. The small space is dark. I turned on the bathroom light switch. White light pops up. The bathroom is empty. Nothing on the floor outside the wedge stopped the door. I checked the small ventilation window above. It's still closed and installed from the inside. My breath was urgent, shallow. My hand was sweaty. I feel exhausted and extremely confused. When I got out of the bathroom, I almost stumbled on the wedge. Picked it up, checked carefully. Without a scratch, there is no sign of impact. It looks like someone gently placed down there. That night, I was almost awake. The incident made me more believed that there was a certain presence in this apartment. Something invisible but able to interact with the physical world. The next day, I went to the electronics store and bought a small security camera, activated by motion. I put it on a small bookshelf in the corridor, heading straight into the bathroom door and bedroom door. I tried to go back and forth several times. The camera works well. The lighting signal lights on when detecting movement. I let it run all night, hoping to record something. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing I did was to check the camera. The indicator lights off. I picked it up, checked the power switch. It was deceived in the turning position. I checked the battery is still full. My heart sagged. I turned on the computer, plugged the memory card to review the filmed films. The camera recorded a few clips the night before, showing that I walked back in the corridor, went to the bathroom, and went to sleep. The last clip was recorded at 2:13 a.m. It was just a quiet scene of the dark corridor, the bathroom door and the bedroom door closed. After that, nothing more. The recording stopped suddenly, as if someone had turned off the camera. I stared at that last frame. There is no silhouette, no strange motion. There is no explanation for the power switch to be wiped out to the short position. The feeling of helplessness and fear reached its peak. Someone or something not only moving objects, opening, but also can interfere with electronic devices. It knew I was trying to record evidence, and it was stopping me. I no longer feel safe in my own home. Every night is a mental torture. I lay in the bed, waiting for the familiar noises, the sound of the door hinges, the sound of the door clicking. I was so tense that my jaw was painful. One night, I dreamed of a tall figure standing at the bedroom door, just a black shape of unknown face. I was startled to wake up. My heart was pungent, sweating out. But when I looked at the door, it was still closed. That dream haunted me all the day the next day. The fatigue, stress, and constant sleep deprivation are wearing me. I decided to try reinstalling the camera again. This time I put it in a different position, a little more discreet. I carefully checked the power switch, make sure it is in the turn position, and use the tape to fix it. I replaced the battery completely. I hope this time will be different. The next morning, when I checked the camera, it was still on. The signal light is still bright. I breathed a sigh of relief. But when I removed the memory card to check on my computer, the memory card disappeared. Empty memory card slot. I searched the whole area around the camera, under the bookshelf, in the corners of the house. Nothing. The memory card has disappeared without a trace, like previous tape. My stomach was empty, the feeling of nausea spilling up the throat. I sat down on the floor, feeling like every strength was drained. Someone took it away, or something, playing with me in a way I could not understand. I hate this place. I was scared of the night. I was scared of the jamming of the doors. I was afraid of the heavy silence that covered the apartment. A few days later, I made a final decision. I can't live like this anymore. I have to leave here. I called the landlord, announcing that I would move at the end of the month. I did not explain the reason, just saying that there was an unexpected individual. I don't want to argue about deposits or anything else. I just want to get out of this place as quickly as possible. The last days in the apartment were the longest days in my life. I almost did not sleep, only took a nap for a few hours during the day. At night, I put all the lights, sitting huddled on the sofa, listening to every noise. The doors are still open. The jamming, clicking still rang steadily. All my door-to-door efforts are in vain. The next morning, they were opened, and obstacles were mysteriously moved. In the process of packaging, I always felt cold behind the neck, feeling like someone was standing right behind, observing me. Occasionally, I heard the whisper very softly, but when I came back, there was no one. Perhaps it was just because my mind was too stressful. Finally, the day of movement came. When the truck took out the wheel, I looked back at the apartment last time through the rearview mirror. It looks normal in the morning sun. Nothing is scary. But I know, behind that door, in those dark corridors, there is something unexplained to still exist. I moved to a temporary friend's house. The first night of the new place of accommodation, I slept long and deep, for the first time after weeks. There are no more open doors, no strange noises, no longer being monitored. I feel like being reborn. But the obsession in the Mercer building is still there. I still have to continue the work of protecting the night shift. After escaping from the terrorist in the apartment, I hope that at least at work, everything will return to normal, that perhaps what happens at home is just because I am too stressed. But no, the 5th floor is still the same. I even feel that the phenomena there becomes even more bold. Heavy footsteps now sound closer and clearer. Sometimes, I felt like it was walking right behind me when I patrolled in the lower floors. The transient shadows on the camera seemed to be a bit longer. The shape was a bit more clear, even though I still disappear before I was in time. The old moldy smell seemed to be even more passionate, clinging to my clothes, haunting me even when I got home. I still kept that footstep. Sometimes I heard it again, as a reminder that I was not crazy. But I no longer try to search for evidence. I no longer try to explain. I just tried to survive every shift night over night. I don't tell anyone about this story anymore. Most people will not believe, they will laugh, or worse, they will look at me with pity. But for me, it's true. The heavy footsteps in the deserted corridor. The doors opened themselves in the night. The balls glided on the camera screen. The smell of moisture old. And above all, the fear of tightening my chest, a permanent fear, startled me in every smallest noise. I learned to live with it, but never really used to it. Every night, when I locked the main door of the Mercer building, stepped into the darkness and the tranquility, partly in me prepared mentally for the things that were about to happen. I sat in the security room, staring at the black and white screen, listening to the snap of the clock, and waiting for footsteps echoing from the top floor, waiting for the flashing light, waiting for something unable to call his name in the dark. I'm still here doing this job in this old building, waiting for dawn and always wondering what was really hiding in those dark corridors, and whether someday, whether it decided to step out of the darkness. The night is still long, and the silence is sometimes the most scary thing.